You know I'm not getting this into 172 seconds, right? Yeah, okay. No, that's all right. I've got a plan. Here we go. It's time for another unspecified length review. This time, Stuffed Fables by Jerry Hawthorne, published by Plaid Hat Games. Stuffed Fables is a cooperative storytelling adventure game for 2 to 4 players ages 7 and up. Players take the roles of stuffed animals who come to life while their little girl is asleep and venture into a mysterious and unknown land. Gameplay is governed by the Adventure Book, a spiral-bound tome which contains not only illustrations and narrative elements, but also the boards and locations that the stuffies will occupy. In addition to standard items and enemies used for every adventure, there's also a discovery deck with secret cards intended for a particular story. There are 7 adventures in the box, each lasting about 2 hours. To begin an adventure, simply start reading, and the text will tell you how to proceed. Each stuffy has a character card displaying their innate ability, as well as special powers that can be triggered by spending hearts that are earned during the game. The card also has room for pieces of stuffing, their life points during the game, as well as storage for a single die. Map pages are typically made up of a grid of spaces, but occasionally the stuffies may encounter a page that works differently. Symbols on the map show spawn points for both the stuffies and minions, encounter points, and exploration goals that can trigger new narrative elements. Lines representing walls or height changes restrict movement or sight lines. If you ever get lost or forget what to do, the overall objective for the page is displayed in the upper corner. On a turn, a player draws 5 dice from the bag. White dice are immediately rolled to try to gain stuffing. If you roll equal to or higher than your current stuffing count, you get a stuffing. Dice can be rolled alone or together to try to get a higher result. Black dice move immediately to the minion track. If there are at least as many dice on the track as there are minions, the bad guys get an activation at the end of the current stuffy's turn. The rest of the dice can be used for player actions. Red dice can be used for melee attacks, green for distance. Roll higher than the map's search value on a yellow die, and you get an item card from the deck. Blue dice don't do anything special on their own, but purple dice are wild and can act as any of the other colors. Any die can be used for movement. Just roll it and move that many spaces, diagonals included. If you want to cross a colored line, though, you need to roll that color die. Attacks are simple. Just roll 1 or more dice that match the weapon card you're using, targeting a minion within your range. If you meet or exceed the defense of the minion, that minion is removed from both the board and the minion track, and you gain a button. That's currency that can be used later. If you're dealing with a boss, they'll take multiple hits to take out completely. Dice are also used to pass attribute checks and complete group tasks. You can store 1 die for later. You can even give dice to teammates to either store on their card or discard to give them a stuffing. All of the used dice go in a discard pile. If the minion track has at least 1 die for each minion, they activate now. Alternately, if there are no minions but at least 1 die for each player, this triggers a surge described in the text. When a minion activates, it rolls a die, signifying what type of action it will perform. This determines how far it moves, what its range is, and how much damage it will do. Minions move toward the closest stuffy unless stated otherwise. The minion will remove stuffing from the stuffy, equaling the damage, unless that stuffy has a die saved for defense. If they do have a defense die, it is rolled, and the result is deducted from the potential damage. If a defense roll meets or exceeds the damage, not only does the stuffy not lose stuffing, but it gets to keep the defense die. If a stuffy runs out of stuffing, it cannot act until it gains more from white dice or other stuffies. Once all the bad guys have activated, their dice, along with all the dice in the discard pile, go back in the bag, and it's the next player's turn. Along the way, stuffies may encounter lost toys, drawn from a deck, who offer some sort of choice, resulting in a boon or detrimental result depending on their actions. Game events may trigger status cards to be placed in front of the stuffies. These may restrict movement or actions, or give some sort of bonus. Typically, it takes an action to remove these from you or an adjacent stuffy. The game's timer is a deck of sleep cards, drawn periodically or when stuffies collapse. Restless cards may trigger effects based on the story page. The waking card is near the end of the deck and will change the ending of the story if revealed. Stuffies continue through the story, page by page, as instructed by the narrative. The stuffies win if they make it to the end of the story, reading different endings based on whether their girl slept through the night or not. They lose if they're all out of stuffing at the same time. Either way, all equipment, hearts, and buttons get packed up at the end, so the stuffies start with a clean slate for the next adventure. While Stuffed Fables shares DNA with Hawthorne's Mice and Mystics, this is a more streamlined system with a thinner rulebook and QR codes that link to instructional videos. The theme is a perfect fit for my kids, and touches like Fables at the start and discussion questions at the end of an adventure keep the game alive away from the table. The characters are distinct, and we laughed out loud at some of the story elements. Individual sessions can go a little long for my kids' attention spans, but it's easy to pause the game at a page break, store everyone's stuff in bags, and pick up where you left off. Once you're done with the story, there's not much to do other than start over from the beginning, but branching paths and random events should keep repeat plays interesting. Overall, Stuffed Fables is an excellent story for families to play together. 9 out of 10. I'm Eric Summerer. For more from the Dice Tower, including video reviews and my favorite audio podcast, visit Dicetower.com. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at CoolStuffInc.com.